There's Erin, ladies and gentlemen. There she is, right there. I ask Erin every now and then to give me phone numbers of people who have ordered books or who have written a letter or emailed or whatever. I can't answer all of them, obviously, but she gave me 5 numbers yesterday and also gave me 5 bookstore numbers, independent bookstores. And so I made 10 phone calls yesterday. And it is delightful to talk to book people, verbivores. You know, these weird people who just love stories and love the printed page. But it has been such a joy to see that there's something of a community that's kind of built up around the story of Theo, and I think an inclination on the part of many to try to emulate this fictional character. I do. I hope I can be more like him myself. But what a joy it has been, and how nice to be with you all this evening.
And I have to say this because I'm sure you saw it going this way when you decided to publish it.
Of course,
and
yeah.
I don't know if this is known, but when we talked in March, we acknowledged that it was on Amazon's bestseller list. It was number 6 at the time, in the category of classic American literature, which is where I would have put it.
Yeah, really?
It was right behind, and then it went to number 3 at one point. Yeah. I saw it go to number 3, right behind Fahrenheit 451 and To Kill a Mockingbird.
Yeah, I'm sure.
So, I mean, I think that this is.
I'm sure that Harper Lee is trembling in her grave.
Yeah. That's. It was there.
It was there.
And that's where I imagine you saw yourself.
Yeah. No. You're being very facetious.
Yeah.
When Erin and I started this venture, she said to Uncle Alan, can we set some goals, some metrics that would at least give me some idea whether I'm doing a good job or not? And I told her, we've already reached my goal. I wanted to finish a novel. I don't need to make any money. I'm retired. I used to be retired. And so I said, if, we spent X dollars, I don't know what it was. I said, maybe we could just make our money back. And maybe we could sell 1,000 books. But good luck. I told her I would do the writing. She had to do everything else. So everything that has happened has been gobsmacking. It has really been a shock in the best sense of the word. And it has encouraged me to stay at it. I am working on another book now, but it has been torturous. And I had read before from authors who had, a somewhat successful first book. They say the second one is always the hardest book you will ever write. And this one has proven to be that. But the reason I want to write it and finish it is because I want to write a third one. And I can only do that if I get this one out of the way.
Yeah.
So it's hard work, but it sure is rewarding. And again, because of good people like you, I can't say thank you enough.
So let me ask about the third one.
Okay.
Because we know about Ellen of Golden. Is the third one another character from Theo, or is
so? Let me tell you, Cameron, something that I learned. So months ago, I made mention to somebody, I'm going to write a book about Ellen, and the worst thing I ever did in life was tell that person that I was going to write a book about Ellen.
Yeah.
Because how many times a day, Aaron, do we get messages from people saying, when is Ellen going to be available?
Right.
So in response to your question, I plead the fifth.
Okay. So we're looking forward to Tony, is what you're saying. It's good. Glad to.
I do love Tony.
I do love that up. So.
My friend Cameron Bean grew up in Charleston, went to CSU over in Columbus. He is now working with Flournoy. Is it construction? Is that the name?
Development.
Development. That's the proper term. They develop these luxury multifamily apartment complexes. He's got 2 projects up in Nashville right now, another one in Charleston, his hometown. Cameron is he is kind of a hero over in Columbus. He's also he is, what's the title, president or chairman of the Georgia Council for the Arts. Quite a prestigious thing. He's also heading up the Georgia 250, which is the Georgia part of the 250th celebration of America's birth. He also is in charge of the Gateways project that oversees maintenance and, I guess, the outlay, the design of the entrances and exits to the city. Remarkably gifted person, and I was asked if there was someone who I would like to interview me, and I said, yeah. someone who is very kind, someone who I can actually get even with if he does a really bad job. And so Cameron, he volunteered to do this tonight. Would y'all thank him for his kind
Thank you. Yeah. Yeah. I'm obnoxiously disarmed when he starts talking that way, but it was very kind, and yeah, always happy to talk with you. We talk about when doing this, and that's going to be like we're just on your front porch, just kind of having a conversation.
Yeah, we are.
Feels exactly like your front porch with all these people sitting right out in the yard.
Can I interrupt you? I'm just going to kind of take charge for just a second. The way this is supposed to work, I think Cameron and I talk, and then you get to ask questions. At any time, if you have a question you'd like to ask, please ask it. You can just raise your hand or get our attention. We would like this, Cameron and I both, if this were a conversation that involved all of us rather than just us. We can talk a lot, though, until someone gets brave enough to raise it. Anybody got a question? Oh! Cameron, right. You are fired. Go home.
That's it. No. This made my job so easy. I like this.
Okay, can we ask a question?
Yeah, let's ask.
Yeah. Cubby Culbertson, friend of mine in Columbia, South Carolina, entrepreneur, great friend, wonderful man. So I wanted people to know from the get-go that this is a book to be enjoyed. I wanted there to be at least a suggestion of lightheartedness in a way that did not detract from the fact that it really is a serious book. And so I called Cubby and I said, hey, Cubby, you don't have to buy any books, but would you mind if I do this? And he said, yeah, I'll be glad to let you use my name. And it was 100 books, and he bought them. But and in case any of you are authors, hello, Riley. He said, here's what I want you to do. Was it one book, Aaron, that he wanted? He said, give me one, and I want you to find 99 book clubs and send one copy to 99 book clubs. I don't think that we ever were able to find 99, but we sent to a bunch. And book clubs, I have discovered, are everywhere, and they are the most wonderful people in the world. So that was Cubby's idea. And we got an email from him today. He's really cheering us on, and I don't know if he thinks it's going to be dedicated to him the next time around. It will go up to 1,000 though if we do it. He's had it. And yeah, really great guy. I've been surrounded by wonderful people all my life. Is the truth of the matter. People who are encouraging and who are a lot less critical of me than I am myself. But Cubby's just one example of that. Yeah, great question. Thank you. Who else had a question? Yes. Oh, yeah. She's already in the Halloween spirit, as you can see. Yes, I have had that question asked much less charitably than that. You know, I never considered another option, and so if I can just back up a bit, and y'all might know this already, but tell you where the story came from. I was in a coffee shop in Columbus. It's called Fountain City Coffee. Maybe you've been there. I go there frequently, not so much for the coffee. I just love Gary Pound's artwork. He's an artist across many genres, but he is a master of portraiture. And I love to go to the coffee shop and see the portraits that Gary has done there. And so one day I was in the coffee shop. I placed my order. I was just kind of looking aimlessly around the room, and I thought, wouldn't it be fun to buy all of these portraits and find their owners and give them to their owners? So I bought 5. And immediately the seed corn of the story started to germinate. And I kind of turned it over in my mind for a while, which was not a new exercise for me. I've done that for years as a songwriter. And ideas abound. They're everywhere. But for some reason, that idea just caught hold of my imagination. And I didn't have really a narrative flow. I didn't have a plot line I wanted to follow, but pretty early on, I knew the relationship between Theo and this local artist, and I knew that at the end of the story, the old man had to go. I just did, and I don't know why, but I will say this, two things. Number one, and maybe you've heard this before, it is said that good art makes us feel something. So I talked to a local, a little independent bookstore owner up in Birmingham yesterday. Jake, is it Reese? Beth, y'all know Jake? Jake Reese, and he got all over me for making him cry too. I told him I cried more than anybody, believe me. But I like the fact that the story, I hope not in a cheesy sort of way, but the story, it gets into our hearts and we fall in love with this man who is really just an embodiment of goodness. And it begs the question to me, why does it bother us so much when goodness is taken out of the world? And it happens every day. And this is just, to put one example under a microscope. And I'm sorry that it happened that way. But he was getting up in years. It was going to happen sooner or later. Yeah, I've had to defend that decision many, many times. No, another question. Yes, ma'am. Right. Yeah. Yeah. So the question is, the bestowals that were done, were those actually a reflection of some actual event that I was familiar with? And the answer is no. But the answer is also probably, right? Because I mean, the stories are credible, I think, and I could easily envision those actually happening. In the book, most of it is just pure fiction, except for who I describe as, I hope not in a disrespectful way, as the little Guatemalan man. And so I was a judge for a couple of years, and there was a little Guatemalan man brought to my office one day. I don't remember what his offense was. He had not hurt anyone. But when he walked into my office, he had just been picked up, and he was terrified. This gentleman was just terrified. He's in the judge's office. He's got shackles on. He's got handcuffs. Deputies are beside him. And he's just a little guy, and I could tell he's going to faint. And as I tended to do when I had cases that were brought to my office rather than the courtroom, I had them take off the shackles and the handcuffs. He sat down. I got an interpreter in the office. I sat down with him, and I reached across the table and I held his hands and I told him, "Do not be afraid, because no one is going to hurt you. I've got to do my job, but no one's going to hurt you." And so we did what we needed to do with the charge. I don't remember what it was, but he didn't have to be incarcerated. And then I just got him to stay. I said, "Would you mind just having a conversation with me?" And so we had this wonderful conversation. And I said, "How'd you get here? Why are you here?" And he said, "Well, I live in Noonan. I'm a bricklayer. I've been here many years. I've got a daughter that was born here. She has cancer." So he said, "I had to come back." He had been deported, and he came back. But that's the only purely true part of the story. But I hope that the rest of it is at least credible, if it's not factual or supportable by a particular story. But yeah, the little Guatemalan man. And I've got his name written. I've got a little book that I use in the mornings to guide me through my prayers. And it's a lot of lists. And there is one day where I have his actual name, because when I used to do cases in the court, I wrote lots of names in my prayer book. And his name is there. And up until like just 2 or 3 days before we sent the book off to be printed, his name was in the book, his real name. And I changed it just because I thought that might not be a good idea, or it might get him in trouble somehow. And I don't remember what the name of the new guy is, but I can remember the actual man's name. Thank you for that question. Yes, ma'am. Thank you. You know, we have, and that's just one more jaw-dropping part of this whole thing. Now, Erin takes all of the calls. She does all of the social media. I don't read any reviews. I've told her that my ego is way too fragile to do any of that sort of thing. But we've had a number of calls, haven't we, Erin? Quite a few calls. When I was writing the book, I wanted to listen to music. And so I put together a playlist of soundtrack music. So it's instrumental, and this is really lush music. It's the kind that makes you cry. And I did. I cried buckets while I wrote this book. I don't cry easily, but when I cry, I really cry good. And I cried and cried and cried while I wrote this book. But the music sometimes would perfectly match the scene that I was writing. And I'm convinced that there were times that the music wrote the scene for me. It just suggested the words, the kind of the feel, the temperature of the language. And I still listen to that soundtrack all the time. And so maybe it'll be a movie, and I'll get your name at the end of the night. You'll be an extra. Yeah, Manette. Maybe you could be Manette, huh? Yeah, she's beautiful. She's beautiful. Yes, yes, ma'am. Uh-huh. Okay. Yes, two great questions. The first is, why did I choose Portugal, and then why the name Theo? So Portugal, I knew that the old man was going to be an artist, and I didn't want to tip my hand too early in the story. And so I thought, if I make him French, or even German, or even Spanish, or Dutch, there was a chance that somebody might start connecting dots too early in the story. But how many of you can name a famous Portuguese artist? Zero. Maybe some explorers, but no artists that I can think of. And so that was the reason for choosing. And in the name of research, I went to Portugal 2 or 3 weeks. Got a nephew who owns a little coffee shop in Opelika called Sidetrack Coffee. David went with me, and we just kind of traveled through Portugal and fell in love with the place. And when we went to the north of the country, to where the Douro River is, that's where I kind of discovered Theo. And I thought, this is his home. So the name Theo, for one thing, I just love the feel of the name. I love the sound of the word Theo. And I hope y'all won't mind if I talk a little bit about my faith. I'm a follower of Christ. I'm unashamed of it. I try not to be obnoxious with it. I try not to wear it on my sleeve in a way that might offend someone unnecessarily. But Theo is a God word. Theology, theophany, theodicy, so many words that have that as the root. And I wanted him to be a man who was godly in the best sense of the word, a holy man who laughed and lived a large life. And so that was kind of why I did the name. But what's your name? Suzette. So Suzette, when I went to Portugal, I told David, I said, now one of our missions here is to find Theo. We got to find his name. We've got to authenticate that this is a real name of a Portuguese man. And so for the first few days, we looked everywhere. Just anything that sounds like Theo. Theodore, Theophilus, Theocrates. And we looked and looked and looked, and we could not find anything that was even close. And then we went to a museum of antiquities in Lisbon. And Cameron, there was this wall, maybe half the size of this wraparound wall. There were 10,000 names on it if there was one. And so I said, David, you start there, I'll start here. And let's meet in the middle. We're going to find Theo. He is on this wall. And we met in the middle. And not only was there no Theo or anything close to it, there was no TH. That digraph does not exist in Portuguese. And so I was thinking, I'm going to have to rename my main character. And that, Suzette, that really hurt my feelings. I really liked the name. And so a few days later, we were in Porto up in the north, and we were walking down a sidewalk next to the river. And they have a lot of sidewalk cafes there. And I had flown another nephew to join us in the name of research. Yes, it's all tax deductible. And we were walking down the sidewalk, and I happened to turn my head. And if I had turned it a second sooner or later, I would have missed this. But I looked, I don't know, maybe 20, 30 yards down this little alleyway, and there was a sign that said, Theo's Bar and Grill. So help me. I'm not spooky, and I don't see signs or anything, but I thought that is an epiphany. And come to find out, it was a Greek restaurant. It was a Greek restaurant, but it was owned by a family that was multi-generational in Portugal. So I said, Theo is it. And then after I finished the book, and I knew this all along, but it was just so deeply, I guess, embedded in my thoughts that it never occurred to me. Gary Pound, the artist who inspired the book with his artwork, is the grandson of a man who was named Theo Golden.
Yep.
Isn't that crazy? So we've got a thing in Columbus called the Golden Foundry, and his mother, who was also an artist, Barbara Golden, who was a wonderful, wonderful woman. Yeah, so Theo Golden, it's all wrapped up in there. And Gary has a son named Theo. So don't tell him the truth. I have told him that it was named after him, but yeah. Yeah, very good. That's good. Thank you. I'm glad y'all are here tonight. Yes. Mhm. Yeah. 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 Great. Yeah. Thank you. I'm honored that you read the book. Thank you. Great to have a young man read a book like that. Yeah. So I'm unapologetic about my faith. I was about your age probably when I began my walk with Christ, and I like to think that everything I've ever done, as a judge, as a lawyer, as a songwriter, it didn't mean that I could always talk about my faith freely. There were a lot of times I would play gigs and people would say, "We know what you're about, but please don't talk about any of that." I say, "No problem." A beautiful song it glorifies God whether we all are conscious of it or not. But the book very much was to me aspirational for me. I'm thinking, what would I like to be like when I get older? So I'm almost 70. This morning there were 35 guys on my porch at my home. We've been meeting for 25 years every Thursday. COVID shut us down very, very briefly. But we have kind of grown old together. And one of the questions that we are exploring a lot now is how best do we grow old? We don't want to sit on couches with remotes. We don't want to just kind of shuffle over the finish line. We really want to end strong. And maybe an 86-year-old man who does what Theo did in the book is not altogether plausible. I'm not so sure that it's not plausible. I'm not sure that it's not doable. But as I wrote it, I was kind of thinking, what does a godly man at 86 look like if he's living life right and has his faculties and his health about him? And so that inspired a lot of the writing in the book. But I did try to pitch the net to as wide an audience as possible. Kindness is kindness. It's a beautiful thing. Our motives for kindness can be different, can't they? I mean, I can pretend to be kind so I can pat myself on the back, or so somebody else will pat me on the back. Or I can do it the way that Theo did it, where he said, "Don't let my left hand know what my right hand is doing," which he had taken as a proposition of his faith. You might remember the scene when Miss Gidley says, "So why don't you just buy them all at one time and get it over with, right? This is so inefficient." But what Theo was trying to I think, express by the way that he was giving the gifts is the idea of incarnation. And to me, that's one of the real main themes of the book. Incarnation meaning that we live physically present to one another, which I think is a significant topic now, because we think we can live virtually or through pixels or through screens, and we can't. I think we can't do it. Theo would say you can't do it. I think he would argue. In fact, I know he would, because I've talked to him about it. He said the only way that we can actually live out this thing called love is if we're close enough to touch the person or the people who we love. Now, there are gestures we can make in that direction. I memorized a little definition of love by C.S. Lewis. He says, love is not merely a feeling. He would not deny that it's a feeling, but love is not merely a feeling. It is a deep unity maintained by the will, deliberately strengthened by habit, and reinforced by the grace we ask and receive from God. Let me say that again. Love is not merely a feeling. It is a deep unity maintained by the will. Think about Theo, the character. He came up with these ideas. They were acts of his will, and he did them, deliberately strengthened by habit. So he knew every Thursday I'm going to be at that bench, and I'm going to be at the restaurant that certain night, and I'm going to be doing these things predictably. He strengthened his love by practice, by habit, and he was a man of prayer. That's not obvious in the book, but you can kind of glean from the text that he is. But let me say, while affirming my own faith, I hope my love for people who don't share my beliefs is unwavering. I love people, and because of what I've learned from Christ. But I hope that anybody who reads the book goes away from it, thinking this is a good life to emulate. Thank you for that question. That's a great question. Thanks. Somebody else had a hand. Yes, ma'am. That was a deep question. He was trying to impress us. I know these college kids do that kind of. Yeah. So tell us how to get it, Aaron. Yeah. If you can do that, you're a lot farther along. It's beautiful, and it's beautiful music. It really is. It's beautiful. Yeah. You got a question?
They've really asked everything on my list. No, I'm kidding. Oh, sure.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Ah, none of them. Yeah, I mean, really, if you are familiar with the median and the downtown area in Columbus, when I practiced law, that was kind of the world that I lived in, the neighborhood. But I wanted a much wider median, and I actually cut a very detailed description of the median and the promenade from one of the earlier manuscripts. But it's much wider. And then I think I made mention of the Angel Fountain at Central Park. Was there a mention of that? Which is a really large fountain. And so the fountain would be bigger than anything we have in downtown Columbus, unless the Chamber of Commerce pays me to change that and make it all about Columbus. No, but here's what I was thinking. Almost if you think about it, every city in the South has a median. It's got an old downtown area. There's probably a river nearby. There's probably some oaks nearby. And my hope was that especially Southern readers would be able to place themselves, in their hometowns, thinking it might be like Golden. Yes, I'm sorry.
And some of your drawings are on the website too, right?
Yeah, I think so.
You did some pencil sketches of the fountain and the kind of the landscape design for it. It's really pretty cool. No, yeah. Some more from the audience. Oh yeah, we'll ask you.
Other questions. I'm loving this. Listen, can we do it this way?
Yeah, that's fine. Let me ask one.
Yeah.
Let me ask one because I want to ask you something process related as well because we talk about the themes in the book and everything, but you were a songwriter for so long, and you're writing songs, and from writing a 3.5-minute song to writing a novel.
Yeah.
Talk a little about what was different, what was the same.
Yeah. They were exactly alike.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
No, they were
All right,
nothing
next
alike.
question.
They were nothing alike. So for 20 or so years, I was a traveling musician. I had started writing songs back in high school, and that's when I think I discovered that I wanted to be a writer of some sort. The obvious difference is that you get to the finish line much sooner when you're doing songs. And there were years when I would kind of make a challenge to myself of writing a song every day, and I did it a number of times. There were a lot of bad songs. They had a lifespan many times of one performance. Like if I were a musician, I would have come tonight with a song or two that I wrote this morning, and y'all would have enjoyed it, and I would have enjoyed it, and it might have said something, but it would have died a very quick death. But one thing that I think is similar between songwriting and at least this first attempt at fiction is that as a songwriter, I woke up every day attentive for things to write about. I just knew there was something in the world that I can write a song about today if I'm attentive. And so my mission was really just to keep my eyes open and see what the thing was that day. And sometimes they were frivolous, sometimes they were profound, sometimes they were whimsical, sometimes they were nature-oriented, sometimes they were people stories. But I think in some way that process has kind of gotten my muscles in shape for a novel. It did not prepare me. I don't think anything can for 3 or 4 years of writing something and never feeling like you're going to finish it. When I was a lawyer, I used words. I was a litigator, so I used words to tell stories to persuade people. That was my job. As a singer-songwriter, I used words to tell stories to persuade people. As a novelist, I use words to tell stories to persuade people. And so there's a real commonality among the three. But songwriting, which I still love to do, you just get to the finish line and you can pat yourself on the back. I just thought this book was never going to be finished. And I'm pretty sure Ellen's not going to ever be finished.
Oh, no. All right.
There was a question back here.
Yeah.
A couple. Let me go to the back first. Yeah, I like lots and lots of writers. I'm a very poor reader, but I'm an avid reader, and I read a lot. And I read kind of cross-genre. My favorite author probably of all time is a Kentucky farmer named Wendell Berry. I love Wendell Berry. Mark Twain, I grew up enjoying. I still love to read Mark Twain. But Dickens, when I was in Edinburgh, when I first showed up for class the first day, I met my professor, Ian Campbell, and we had a nice conversation. And I told him, I said, Professor Campbell, I really don't care if I get a degree or not. I think I will do all the work that I need to do. But I would really like to read books that everyone ought to read if they're English speaking sometime in their life. Would you help me do that? And he was really happy to have a student that was eager to learn. And so I got my degree, but I also read lots and lots and lots of books that we were probably supposed to read in college, but we were not ready for. But my late 30s, early 40s, whatever I was at the time, I was ready for them. And so a lot of the Victorians, Scottish fiction. We started with Walter Scott, and we went into the early part of the 20th century, John Buchan and some other Scottish authors. But I really, really love to read. And for most of my adult life, I've not had a television. There's one in my house now because my father's been living with me, and he wanted a television. But I spend most of my free time with a book. Can I give a quick advertisement real quick, too? This is my favorite book of the moment. It's called My Bookstore. I think my sister gave this to me. This was bought up in Birmingham at Jake Reese's bookstore. And it's 80 chapters by authors talking about their favorite local independent bookstore. It is delicious. It is so good. And the reason that I wanted to make mention of this is so that I could say thank you to Auburn Oil and the work that they do in your community. There is no such thing as an independent bookstore. They depend on us. Libraries are great. I have spent half my life in libraries. I love them. But, and I'm not saying this because I'm an author, buy books. It is hard to be an author. Extremely hard. And in the day of Amazon, to make a livelihood off of the margins that you get, it is really, really challenging. So if you have a bookstore you love, please patronize them. I know you probably do. But a special thanks to them tonight. I heard somebody start clapping over here. I think we should do that. Someone mentioned Narnia over there a minute ago. I'm rereading Narnia right now. And it's just some of the most glorious literature, I think, of all time. If y'all have not read them recently, you might dust off your copies, and it will be well worth your time. There was another question right there. Right. Yeah. I think that probably just grew out of a sense that we all need it. I mean, we have lived through some ugly years. I don't know that they're uglier than all the other years in history. Maybe they are. Maybe it's just that we have more availability of media and whatnot. But I think we need to be reminded, and I think that Theo, so there is a phrase, imago Dei, the image of God. I think Theo wanted everybody to know, no matter how ruined you are, no matter how ruined I am, no matter how messed up the world is, we are still the image bearers of God. And so he used that little moment of ceremony. And that, again, is why he didn't let Miss Gidley talk him into taking that opportunity away. And I would like to think maybe as I reflect on those passages, that I would be encouraged myself at every opportunity, bless people with words that encourage and affirm the image of God in them. It's hard to do sometimes because we're ugly things sometimes. But the truth is the truth. And I really love that part of the book. I love that he did that. You know, you might ask yourself, is there somebody you can do that for? In fact, I would challenge you. Think of something you can do for somebody, and don't tell anybody you're doing it. And when you've done it, don't tell anybody you did it. Don't let your left hand know what your right hand is doing. And I don't practice that nearly as much as I should, but Russell, it's the way to do it. It's the way to live our lives and to fill the world with little, nameless, unremembered acts of kindness and love. Your community, my community, the country, the world would all be better if we could just live that sort of ethic, I think. Thank you for that question. Yes, ma'am. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. I assume I'll be buying the coffee. Yeah, yeah. Thank you for that. You know, we get lots of book club invitations, and I love doing them. But for the last year and change, I've been trying to keep my head in the writing lane. Monday at 5 o'clock. You never know. What you got? This one. Yeah. That is a really sneaky way to get around.
That's right. She got you. She got you.
I love all of them, but I love Tony. I love Tony. I love the fact that he's got some battle scars from life. And I will tell you this, without going into any detail at all, I've got a really, I think, beautiful storyline for book 3 if I can get through book 2. That is a big if, but I really like his character. Yeah, Basil Cannonfield. There's the cellist, Simone, and then Basil Cannonfield is the guitarist and the guy that stands on the street. I actually wrote a bunch of songs for Basil, and recorded them, and I thought maybe one of these days we'll stage something down at the Springer or the River Center, and I'll get to sing Basil's songs. Yeah,
that's a good idea.
Yes, ma'am.
Or
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, the interesting thing, Amazon does not tell us where books go. They're pretty proprietary about their information. But I think we've gotten kind of everywhere, hadn't we, Aaron? The message that Cubby sent me today, he said he got a call from a friend who was in England, and he said, I've overheard conversations there about the book. I did a book club not terribly long ago, and it was a women's group, and there were participants in Portland, San Francisco, Austin, Kansas City, Boston, Asheville, Atlanta. And they've had this book club for 30 years. They do it now by Zoom. But I think the reception's been pretty good most places. Aaron knows not to tell me anything bad about the reviews. Yes. There is. So that the question is the theme of universality, or maybe common humanity, the things that we share with one another. I would point also to the part about sadness, where Theo says nobody dodges this bullet. It's just a part of who we are. And I think maybe the reason that I was inclined to include that is just because we seem to be at this place in the world, especially here in the U.S., where we're just accentuating every possible difference that we can find to separate ourselves. And the truth is, if we sit down and have a conversation on a bench with somebody, we're going to probably find we got a lot in common. And we heard about the same things, and we cry about the same things, and we're afraid of the same things. And at the end of the day, I think we all want to know the God who might just love us all. And so just drawing everybody into the net, I would like to think that readers would say, yeah, I belong. I'm in that part. I'm in that part. And again, I was trying to pitch to as wide an audience as I possibly could, and what better way to do that than just to point out the things that we know are true of us all. The sadness chapter has really been interesting to me. We added that the week before we sent the book off. I just wanted to round out Theo a little bit better. I didn't want him to come across as saccharine or a happy-clappy kind of out of touch with reality kind of person. Not that was a significant addition in terms of just word count, but I liked that it came out of his mouth that he was a veteran of sadness, or I think that was the term I used. Because it's interesting because I think that has gotten a strong response from the people that I've talked to about the book. And people usually say, I sure do appreciate you giving me permission to be sad. Because the truth is we all get sad. And I think if we live in that illusory world of Facebook and curated pictures of our lives, it's really easy to create the impression that doesn't pertain to us. If anybody took pictures of any of us in a typical week, we would be banned from any platform on the internet. Our lives are messy. They just are. But we still bear the imago Dei. The image of God is in us, and we can still be kind and get better.
Let me follow that up with another theme in the book and a lot of your personal experience as a judge. Mm-hmm. When you talked about bad mercy is always better than bad justice. Mm-hmm. And to her point about all the things we carry and all the forgiveness and talk a little about that philosophy.
Yeah. So that was an outgrowth of being a judge. I was a judge. It's a small county. It's a small court. But I realized very, very early into a short term that I had the power as a judge to really mess people's lives up. And there were so many times on the bench that I would just have the thought, could there be anything worse than being a criminal defendant or being in a court of a judge who does not care? I just thought that would be the most unthinkable fate. And there were times when I had to make a decision. Be hard or be soft or be reasonable, whatever. Really lean into the justice thing or lean into the mercy thing. And I told the deputies early on, the courtroom deputies, because I gave them permission to criticize anything I did, especially early on. And they criticized me. They said, Judge, you got to tighten up. And I said, well, I'm just going to be honest with you. If I have to make a choice between bad justice, being too severe with somebody, or bad mercy, I'm going to go with bad mercy. And it gave me a chance to be very honest with him and say, I have been forgiven so much that I cannot look at another person as some chattel that I'm supposed to beat up on. I was severe. I could be that way. But the bad justice and the bad mercy came out of just the years on the bench. And I think in this world, a lot of times, my inclination, our inclination, maybe the cultural inclination is to be really hard on the people that don't look or act or talk just like us. And I think maybe I can be a lot more merciful at times than I am. Yeah. Another question. This is so fun.
I can ask one from the list.
Yeah.
Very different from the last question.
Okay.
What is your tropical island book if you were to be stranded?
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Pretty sharp turn there.
That is a sharp turn. Um, I mean, of course, the Bible. That would be first. But if I place that to the side, a desert island all by myself. Yeah, if I'm on a desert island all by myself, I would probably choose how to build a boat.
That's good.
On a very low cost budget.
Great answer. Here's an interesting one. Do you see?
They've all been interesting.
Yeah, yeah. Well, This is. Do you see into people's hearts when you look at them and their faces like Theo did when he looked at their portrait?
Yeah. I hope. I hope I do that. To me, that's what it means to love people. You know. So David Brooks wrote a wonderful book that came out the same month as Theo did. It's called How to Know a Person. It's nonfiction. David Brooks is used to be a New York Times writer, brilliant man, wonderful social commentator. But he talks about the art of conversation, and he encourages the art of conversation. And he says, what better place to get to know somebody than on a bench, which was kind of exactly what the setting for Theo was. But I think that, if we, again, I'll go back to that same idea, the Imago Dei. You are the image bearer of God. You are the image bearer of God. We're the image bearers of God. And if we look for that first, and accept the fact that every day we are helping, to use C.S. Lewis's phrase again, we are helping one another either to become everlasting splendors or immortal horrors. But if we go into a conversation, a meeting with a new friendship, and say, I want to help this person become an everlasting splendor. I want to help people become an everlasting splendor. That's what Theo did. He wanted to mine the potential, the saintly potential that they all had, that we all have. And so that idea of looking at someone with what one author calls a just and loving gaze, Iris Murdoch, encountering people that way, first of all, it just makes life so rich, and it deals with some of the sadness. And it really gives us an opportunity to lean into the things that are common to all of us. So the answer, Cameron, would be, I hope I do that. And I hope that I will get better at it as I get older. Yeah, I do. Okay. Who got some? We all done?
He is.
Okay. Which scene is that? Is there an angel? Okay. Oh, yeah, good. Oh, yeah, I forgot about that. That's a great scene. Oh, my gosh, that is a great scene. Oh, yes, yes, yes. I totally forgot about that. Yeah, that's for real. I think that was meant to be a real encounter. The little boy, and I like the fact that this big old brawny fisherman, who smelled the fish and had been out there in the water all day, had a sensitive enough heart to love beauty and to pause and to look at the sunset and then to teach that little boy and stick his finger in the mud, right? Oh, that's a great scene. No angel, except, in some metaphorical sense. It's a real man, but Theo, looking back on his childhood, could say that was a pivotal moment for me. Just like when he was in the museum and he heard the music. Wasn't there a scene about him hearing some music in the museum? And that was another pivotal moment in his life when beauty broke in on him. And don't we all long for those kind of moments when beauty or something really wonderful in life speaks to our hearts and wakes us up and makes us realize that life is good, it's rich. It was an angel.
Thank you.
Right, right. It is dangerously creative. Really, so my last 3 years of law practice, when I left after 10 years, I had been working very, very full time. Moved to Edinburgh for a couple of years, and I just realized that working as hard as I had been working was really starting to suck the life out of my soul. And so when I went back to law practice for 3 more years, it was part time. But while I was in Edinburgh, I started writing and playing again a lot. And so my last 3 years of law practice was usually mornings at the law office, afternoons in the studio. And I had a foot in both worlds. And then I thought, I think I want to get this music thing out of my system. And so my career plan was to leave law, go into music, do it for a couple of years, go broke, go back to law practice. And my career plan failed. But there was not a moment. It was just kind of, life just kind of moved in that direction. And then, as I hope I try to do with big decisions, I sought the counsel of people whose judgment I trust more than my own. And what do you think if I were to leave law practice and do music? And everybody was very affirming, so I did it, and really happy I did it. Yeah, I don't have a family, so that could sound like a really cavalier sort of decision to make if I had a wife and children. But I've never married, and so I don't have children, and it was real easy just to pick up and I mean I can live on nothing, and so Edinburgh was just a wonderful experience, and it kind of freed me up to think, okay, there are other things I can do in life. When I was in Edinburgh, I flirted with the idea of becoming a professor and maybe getting my doctorate while I was there. So I applied, and I was going to do a thesis on George MacDonald, a Scottish author. But 5 more years of research was just more than I thought I could handle. So I came home. Yeah. Y'all are a wonderful bunch of listeners. Yes, ma'am. Mm-hmm. Sure. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I don't think so. I'm very aware of my sadness. I wrote a book about my brother Gary. He died at 55 of a glioblastoma, and he lived exactly 365 days after he was diagnosed. Our family had never had a death of a close family member up to that point, and I really kind of tapped into the fact that it's hard to lose somebody. My brother was also an unmarried bachelor. We were very different, but we were best friends. He was my hero, my mentor, and so that was a sad year, but very joyful. The best year of my life, bar none. So I had written about sadness, but I think when I came to Theo, I was just intrigued by the idea of creating a character that I would like to grow up to be like, and trying to make a story out of it. I would encourage you to write. Just do it. Pick up your pen and start writing. That's how you do it. Okay. Yes, ma'am. Oh, oh wow. Mm.
He's like, I like that. I'll take that.
Yeah. Do I want to be honest, or do I want to impress somebody? That was never in my thoughts. That is a really intriguing thought, though. Yeah, wasn't Pierce just an awful guy? Right. That's great. That is a great thought. I'm going to think about that driving up to Franklin, Tennessee tomorrow, and I'm going to impress 2 audiences with with all of this nuance that y'all are teaching me this afternoon about the book.
Last time I think I asked, has anybody taught you anything about the book that you didn't
Um,
intend? And you said, I'm going to have a better answer for you next time. So
yeah,
thank you.
there's
You
one
gave
right
him
there.
you gave him the
Thank
answer.
you. I love that you read the book that carefully. You know. Hmm. Oh. Oh my gosh! Wow! Wow! Oh, interesting. Yeah. Sorry about your mom's passing. Mother-in-law. Can I share a story with y'all and end on this? Maybe.
Absolutely.
What you got?
Well, I was, yeah, I'm going to go first. Um, I, I don't know about you, but I've never known a book to be given like that by so many people, and that's a very special story. And I've heard stories of people gifting this um, to so. What is? I mean, I don't know if that's a you question or just a.
Yeah.
What do you think that is about?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know what to say to that. It certainly is affirming. I want it to be a story that people share. Um, but I don't know. I think maybe it's just the time that we're living in now. There's so much acrimony in the air that people see it as something to kind of fight back against that. Let me just offer this to you too. So David Housel, the former AD here in Auburn, David has been very gracious. He's been giving the book away, and for the last 3 weeks, I've been corresponding rather generously with Terry Sabin, Nick Saban's wife. She bought copies for all her family. So, so I will say War Eagle here.
Yeah.
I
Oh. Yeah, I think I may need to get out of here.
Okay. I'll end with a little story. Um, so Erin knows, and she's very good not to let me see social media and reviews and that sort of thing. But every now and then, when she senses that I am starting to lose momentum, she'll call and she'll say, "Here's some numbers. I want you to call these people." She might give me a little hint of what the conversations are going to be about. I called one lady last night, and I left a message because she didn't pick up. She called just a few minutes later, and she said, "Today is the 1 year, no, yeah, the 1 year anniversary of my husband's death. No, it's my first anniversary without my husband." She's got 6 kids. She said, "I woke up today and she said, I prayed, Lord, will you do something special for me today?" But those kind of things. So that was yesterday times 10. But back in March, so I was working on Ellen. Maria, I was about to pull my hair out. I just thought, I can't do this anymore. And Erin could tell it, that I was about to give up again. And she said, call these numbers. So one of them was a woman named Carol Conway. This was back in March. And Erin didn't tell me too much about her. She said, just call Carol Conway. And so I called Carol and introduced myself. And I knew that she had read the book. And so I said, hey, I'm just calling to thank you for reading this book that I'd written. I'm a first-time novelist. And so we had a really, really nice conversation. And I said, do you have time to talk? She said, yeah, I got time. And I said, well, would you just tell me your story, like who you are, what you do? She said, well, I'm a retired 35-year English teacher in Chicago. She said most of the teaching that I did was in some of the more challenged parts of the city. She said, I love teaching children. She said, but I retired a few years ago. I went to a seminary of some stripe just for a year, just to kind of, ground my faith better. She says, but now I'm teaching a class of about 50 adults, and the class is called Books We Were Supposed to Read in High School. And she said, we're going to read Theo and Gold. And I said, well, thank you, but there's no way y'all could have read this book in high school. And she said, yeah. She said, I know. She said, my doctor told me recently I've got 3 to 6 months to live. And this is the last book that I want to read with my students. And so we talked, and I said, would you mind if I write a letter to your class to thank them for reading it? And she said, sure, that'd be great. She said, but we're gonna read it over 4 weeks. She said, would you come do our last class by Zoom? And so we had an hour and a half Zoom class with Carol and her 50 friends. And it was remarkable. And I could tell these people love this woman. And so we finished the class, and Carol and I continued to call. She called me one night. She said, "So, Alan, tonight there is going to be a Theo party, and there's going to be 60 Catholic nuns, Sisters of Charity, and everything about the night is going to be about Theo." And so I called her back the next day, and she told me all about the party, and we kept in touch. And then she called me one day, and she said, "I'm getting ready to go to hospice." And so her daughter, and she and I kept in touch in hospice. The last message I sent her, I just recorded a little video, tell her I love her. She called me back. She said, "I love you too." That's the last thing I heard from her. And Carol died on July 6th of this year. The reason I share that with you is that common humanity, the imago Dei that is in all of us, the Theo that is in all of us, the Theo, the God part in all of us, is something worth fighting for. I've talked to some people who are experts in the business world, and they say, if your book is not either strongly political or dark, you're going to have a real hard time getting an audience to read your book. I still say that good books are worth fighting for, and kindness is worth living for. And so again, thank you for blessing me with your time. I know that I took 10 or 12 hours of your life when you read the book, and maybe some clinics along the way. But thank you so much for reading the book, and thank you for your presence here tonight. It has been a great blessing to me. Thank you. Thank you. I'm so glad.